concise, there are systemic therapy options. These are the MVAC and the gemcitabine-based chemotherapy option. So the toxicity rates at MVAC is very high. However, the gemcitabine and cisplatin-based combination are very comfortable. As shown in various studies, it has a similar response rate with better quality of life and lower toxicity rates. So why to worry? Why we are thinking too much about the cisplatin eligibility and ineligibility? So if you will see the basic cisplatin toxicity profile, the first, if we concentrate on the four system, the first is a renal system. So cisplatin is a heavy metallic compound and it acts like regenerating the oxygen free radical and is basically clearing this through the renal. So if there is a poor and compromised GFR, the cisplatin can release the oxidative radicals which can cause acute kidney injury. So because of this, we need a very good pre-hydration, pre-cisplatin, the pre-hydration and the post-hydration for the cisplatin. The second system is basically the cardiac system, because if there is a cardiac compromise, the patient will be very difficult to give a hydration pre-cisplatin and the post-cisplatin. So the third system is basically the neurotoxicity. If the patient is already having a peripheral neuropathy, these patients will be at the higher risk of developing the neurotoxicity with the cisplatin. And the fourth and the main system is ototoxicity, which is basically an important toxicity concern with the cisplatin, as our median age for the urinary bladder cancer is basically 65 to 70 years, and at this age most of the patient has already grade 1 and grade 2 ototoxicity, basically hearing loss, and cisplatin additionally can cause further reduction in the hearing sensitivity by the 20 to 25. So the patient already having a hearing loss can also precipitate the more SNSU with the cisplatin. So apart from the cisplatin toxicity, there are multiple patient-related factors like the age, performance status, and the comorbidity. As with increasing age, post 30 to 40 years of age, the renal function declined by the 1% every year, and also the smoking-related vascular disease also compromise the renal function in old age patient. Apart from the disease-related factor like urinary tract infection also lead to the nephropathy and the hydronephrosis, which can further compromise the renal function. So this is a Galsky criteria. So basically in 1997, the European group, based on the different heterogeneity in the set of the patient taken in the different randomized trial, they have taken a survey from the 40 medical oncologists initially, and 2011 they have summarized all the survey from the 65 academic center, and they have given criteria for the cisplatin eligibility. They have taken basically 5 parameters based on the performance status, renal function, hearing function, neuropathy, and the heart function based on the toxicity profile of the cisplatin. So if the patient is having a ECOG and the KPS more than 2, KPS less than 60 to 70%, creat clearance less than 60, hearing loss already CTCA criteria grade 2 or more than grade 2, neuropathy grade 2 or more than 2, and heart function NYHA classification grade 3 and more than grade 3. So if any one factor is met, patient will be considered for the cisplatin based chemotherapy. So this is the ideal criteria, and if we will count this ideal criteria, almost at the diagnosis 60% of the patient will be excluded from this criteria. So I will discuss our first case scenario. So there is a 66-year-old male with controlled diabetes type 2 with no other comorbidity, complaint of hematuria with good ECOG performance status. In the CT scan it was found very small lesion with 3.4 into 2.4 centimeter lesion. And on the further workup, patient underwent the TURBT. In histopathology, it was high-grade urothelial carcinoma. DTPA GFR was done, it was 66 ml per minute. On the clinical staging with CT scan and the metastatic workup, it was found to be T3N0M0. So if you will see the Galsky criteria, this is the ideal scenario, and this patient fit for the ideal cisplatin eligible case. So this patient was planned for the neoadjuvant chemotherapy followed by reassessment. So all the evidence already covered by Amit sir, so I am not going through the very detail about the evidence. So neoadjuvant chemotherapy, we have cisplatin based multi-agent regimen, MVAC and CMV regimen, and also the gemcitabine and cisplatin combination. So this is a neoadjuvant chemotherapy meta-analysis already shown by Amit sir. So let's go towards the case 2. So this is a second case scenario. 63-year-old male, very fit patient with former smoking history, presented in the emergency department with painless hematuria. And on CT scan abdomen, there were the 5 lesions and the largest size was 8.5 into 5.1 centimeter. If we look at the CT scan, here we can see the patient is having a grade 3 bilateral hydroureteronephrosis. So what we'll do later? Patient underwent transurethral resection. On histopathological examination, the biopsy was proven with high-grade urothelial carcinoma. The patient PS was 2. On the metabolic profile, the blood urea nitrogen was 142 and creatinine was found to be 6.7. So we will follow the Galsky criteria here. So we will found this patient as a cisplatin ineligible. Is it really true that we should follow the Galsky criteria at each and every situation? So, learning from this case, after being stabilization, this patient underwent percutaneous nephrostomy, and within the 2-week duration, the creatinine level normalized to 1.1, and the repeat DTPA GFR it has improved to the 58 ml per minute. On further basic metastatic workup, in the CT scan thorax, patient was having a multiple lung mets. So, the initially cisplatin ineligible case, after the intervention, found to be cisplatin eligible, and this patient was planned for the cisplatin based multi-drug combination palliative chemotherapy. So, based on case to case, we should not follow the strict ideal guideline if the patient is fulfilling all of the criteria but only having a poor GFR. To case based on the case by case scenario, we should take a call and we should individualize the treatment depending on the case. So, this was very beautifully described by this paper published in 2021. This article has defined the criteria for those patients who are fulfilling the 4 criteria: ECOG Pierce, CTCA less than grade 2 neuropathy, hearing loss less than grade 2, but only fail to achieve GFR criteria. So, as we already know that more than 60 ml per minute GFR patient is eligible for cisplatin, and the patient less than 40 patient is ineligible. Now the window period is between, what should we do between 40 to 50 ml. So in those patients there are multiple strategies they have explained. First is decompression if there is acute neuropathy. Nephrology consultation we can take before giving a cisplatin administration. Aggressive hydration, pre, during and post cisplatin infusion. The fourth is minimize the concomitant nephrotoxic medication. We can reduce the conventional cisplatin regimen by the dose 25 to 50%, and we can also give a split dose cisplatin. Rather than giving 70 mg per meter square on day 1, we can opt for the 35 mg per meter square on day 1 and day 8. Coming to our third case scenario, this is a 75-year-old male presented with gross hematuria. On TRBT, this patient was found to be T3 urothelial cancer. The patient PS was 2, but this patient was having a grade 3 sensorineural hearing loss and also found to be metastatic bone disease. So this is a metastatic muscle invasive bladder cancer with PS2 and grade 3 hearing loss. So if you will see the Galsky criteria, 2 criteria are not met. Then what next? Is it carboplatin can be given in place of the cisplatin? So if we look at the evidence, the carboplatin neoadjuvant regimen, it fails to compete with the cisplatin. It was found to be inferior as compared to the cisplatin. So carboplatin we should never opt in the neoadjuvant setting. Also in the metastatic setting, this is a meta-analysis where carboplatin was shown to be inferior to the cisplatin. So wherever possible, we should try to give cisplatin-based combination, not the carboplatin-based combination. Also, there is another approach in those patients having a non-metastatic disease but having a good PS, not opting for the radical cystectomy, or patient is medically unfit for the surgery. In those patients, this was a study where the mitomycin and 5-FU-based chemotherapy was also given along with the radiation therapy. The point to be noted in this trial, the PS was 0 to 1 and the patient GFR was taken more than 25 ml per minute. And compared with the radiation therapy alone, this combination was shown to be better glucoresal control compared with the radiation alone. So this is also another option if the patient is cisplatin ineligible, non-metastatic muscle invasive bladder cancer with good PS but only the GFR is poor, we can opt for the organ preservation approach with mitomycin and 5-FU. So coming to our last case scenario, a 70-year-old male hypertensive post-TURBT found to be high-grade urothelial carcinoma. PGL1 positive setting on the biopsy block, but this patient is having a GFR 26 ml per minute. And apart from this, patient is having a severe AS ECOG PS3. So this patient will be based on the criteria considered to be platinum ineligible. So what to do in this kind of patient? We can't give we can't give the cisplatin, we can't give the carboplatin. So there are the futures, there are also phase 2 data for the use of immunotherapy in these set of the patient. The pembrolizumab tried in the keynote 52 trial and also atezolizumab. So if you will see the comparative data of the atezo and the pembrolizumab, the overall response rate with atezo was found to be 23% and for the pembro it was found to be 29%. With median OS with atezo was 15.9 and for the pembrolizumab it was not reached. So we can also consider the pembrolizumab and the immunotherapy option in those set of patients who are found to be platinum ineligible. So in summary, if you will see the ESMO guideline, non-metastatic muscle-invasive bladder cancer, if they are unfit for the surgery, cisplatin-based chemotherapy, we should opt for the direct, if the patient is willing for the surgery, then radical cystectomy along with lymph node dissection, or if the patient doesn't opt for the surgery, then we can take an organ preservation protocol. However, if the patient is fit for the cisplatin, we can try 3 to 4 cycle of the neoadjuvant-based cisplatin combination and followed by the surgery or the radiation, whichever opted first. This is a ESMO guideline for the metastatic muscle-invasive bladder cancer. If the patient is found to be cisplatin eligible, we can plan for the palliative chemotherapy with cisplatin base and followed by the maintenance immunotherapy with avelumab. If the patient is found to be cisplatin ineligible and the PD-L1 unknown or negative status, we can offer the gemcitabine and carboplatin combination. Or if the patient is cisplatin ineligible and the PD-L1 positive, then we can offer immunotherapy also. Although there is a grade 3 level of evidence, but we can offer immunotherapy in those such kind of patient. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pooja. So I think she has taken care of the various eligibility criteria very well.